There are places in the wilderness where people simply vanish. No screams, no evidence, no logical explanation. Thousands of people disappear in national parks every single year. Most are eventually found. But some cases are different. Entire search teams comb areas inch by inch, only for victims to later appear in places already searched multiple times. Children travel impossible distances through brutal terrain. Experienced outdoorsmen vanish under perfect conditions without leaving behind a single trace. And in many of these cases, strange patterns begin to emerge. Sudden storms, missing shoes and clothing, victims found in locations that make absolutely no sense. Some believe these are tragic accidents. Others believe there's something else hiding deep within the wilderness. Something we still don't understand. The term Missing 411 became widely known through former police officer and investigator David Paulides. Paulides spent years documenting strange disappearances occurring in wilderness areas across North America. According to his research, many cases seem to share bizarre similarities. Victims disappear extremely quickly. Search dogs fail to track scents. The weather suddenly changes immediately after disappearances. Bodies or belongings are later found in areas already searched repeatedly. Children are often involved, and sometimes survivors describe strange experiences they can barely explain. Critics argue these cases are simply combinations of exposure, accidents, animal attacks, or human error. But even skeptics admit, some of these stories are deeply unsettling. On October 2nd, 1999, 3-year-old Jaryd Atadero disappeared in the mountains near Padre Canyon, Colorado. And to this day, nobody knows exactly what happened to him. Jaryd was visiting from Illinois with his father and sister. That day, he joined a Christian singles group hiking near the Big South Trail in Roosevelt National Forest. His father was not present during the hike. At one point, witnesses reported Jaryd excitedly running ahead on the trail after spotting what some described as butterflies. And then, he vanished. At first, nobody panicked. The adults assumed he had simply gone slightly farther up the trail. But within minutes, the situation became terrifying. Jaryd was nowhere to be found. An enormous search operation began almost immediately. Hundreds of volunteers searched the area. Search dogs were deployed. Helicopters scanned the terrain. Nothing. No footprints, no signs of struggle, no blood, no scent trail. The terrain itself made the case even stranger. The area surrounding the trail included steep drop-offs, dense forest, rocks, and dangerous terrain that would have been difficult even for adults to navigate. Yet there was no evidence Jaryd had fallen. No evidence he had wandered off the trail. It was as if he had simply disappeared. Then, over 3 years later, a hiker made a disturbing discovery. Jaryd's clothing and partial remains were found approximately 500 feet above the trail in an extremely rugged area. An area many believed would have been nearly impossible for a 3-year-old child to reach alone. But the strangest detail involved the clothing itself. His shoes reportedly showed surprisingly little damage. His sweatshirt appeared relatively intact. Some investigators and family members felt the clothing looked almost placed there, not scattered naturally through years of wilderness exposure. Even more disturbing, search teams had previously been near the exact area, so how had nobody found him earlier? Some theorized a mountain lion attack. Others pointed to hypothermia and exposure, but for many people following the case, the unanswered questions still linger. How did a toddler travel that terrain alone? Why was there almost no trace? And why did evidence seem to appear years later in an area connected closely to previous searches? The story of Keith Parkins may be even stranger, because unlike many missing 411 cases, Keith survived. On April 9, 1953, 2-year-old Keith disappeared near Ritter, Oregon. He had been playing outside his family home. Then suddenly, he was gone. Searchers immediately feared the worst. The terrain surrounding the area was brutal. Dense wilderness, freezing temperatures, rocky slopes, creeks and forests stretching for miles. The chances of survival for a toddler alone in those conditions seemed almost non-existent. Hundreds of people searched for Keith. Planes scanned the forest from above. Tracking dogs attempted to follow his scent. Again, nothing. No footprints, no clear trail, no signs of animal attack, no indication of where the child had gone. Hours passed. Then, an entire day. Most searchers began believing the child could not possibly still be alive. 19 hours later, Keith was discovered alive. But where he was found shocked everyone. The toddler had somehow traveled nearly 12 miles away through incredibly difficult terrain. Terrain that included steep hills, freezing wilderness, and obstacles many adults would struggle to cross. Searchers were stunned. Many believed it would have been physically impossible for a 2-year-old to travel that far alone. Even stranger, Keith reportedly had only minor injuries. Some accounts claim he described being helped by a bear. That detail has fueled speculation for decades. Was it simply the imagination of a child? Did he encounter an actual animal? Or was there something else in the wilderness with him that night? By themselves, each of these cases could potentially be explained away. Accidents happen. People become disoriented. Nature is unforgiving. But when researchers began comparing hundreds of cases, certain patterns appeared repeatedly. Patterns that many people find difficult to ignore. One of the most commonly reported elements is sudden weather changes. In many disappearances, storms arrive almost immediately after the victim vanishes. Conditions that make searches dramatically more difficult and erase physical evidence. Coincidence? Possibly. But it happens often enough that many investigators consider it one of the defining missing 411 traits. Another strange detail involves clothing. Victims are frequently found missing shoes, jackets, or pants. Sometimes clothing is folded neatly. Other times it's discovered far away from remains. Experts often attribute this to hypothermia-induced paradoxical undressing, where freezing victims irrationally remove clothing. But critics point out cases occurring in temperatures where hypothermia seems unlikely, and in some incidents, the clothing appears strangely untouched. Perhaps the most disturbing pattern involves search locations. Victims or evidence are often discovered in places already searched multiple times, sometimes by trained professionals, sometimes with dogs. How does that happen? Were search teams simply unlucky? Or was the victim somehow not there originally? That question has become one of the central mysteries surrounding Missing 411. So what's actually happening in these wilderness cases? There are several theories, and some are far more grounded than others. Skeptics argue there's no mystery at all. People underestimate wilderness constantly. Exposure, falls, dehydration, animal attacks, and disorientation can kill incredibly quickly. Children especially can travel surprising distances during panic situations. Searches are imperfect. Terrain hides evidence, weather destroys clues, and human memory often becomes unreliable during traumatic events. Many investigators believe every Missing 411 case can eventually be explained through ordinary means. Others believe some disappearances involve human involvement. Remote wilderness areas are isolated, perfect places for crimes to occur unnoticed. Some theorists suggest serial offenders may have operated in national parks for decades without detection. But this theory struggles to explain cases involving impossible travel distances, or victims appearing in previously searched locations. And then there's the theory that keeps people awake at night. The possibility that something unknown exists deep in remote wilderness areas. Cryptids, unidentified predators, or phenomena we don't fully understand. Bigfoot is often connected to Missing 411 discussions because of repeated reports involving strange sounds, feelings of being watched, sudden silence in forests, and impossible disappearances. Of course, there's no definitive evidence connecting cryptids to these cases. But for many people, the wilderness still feels deeply unexplored. Even today, vast sections of forests and mountain ranges remain rarely traveled by humans. And perhaps the most unsettling part of it all is realizing how quickly nature can swallow someone without a trace. Maybe Missing 411 is nothing more than coincidence mixed with the terrifying power of nature. Or maybe these cases represent something we still don't understand. Because somewhere out there tonight, families are still searching for answers. Search teams are still combing forests. And deep in the wilderness, there are places where people continue to vanish, without explanation, without evidence, without a trace. And perhaps the scariest realization of all is that whatever's happening out there could happen to anyone. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Missing 411 mysteries, subscribe to The Truly Bizarre for more documentaries covering unsolved disappearances, paranormal phenomena, cryptids, and the darkest mysteries on Earth. And let me know in the comments, do you think these cases can be explained naturally? Or is there truly something strange hiding in the wilderness?